Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Ankita Mukherjee. Air and noise pollution levels touched alarming heights on Diwali despite all the advertisements and pleas by the government as well as civil society organisations who asked people to say no to crackers and fireworks. Delhi, the most polluted city in the world according to the World Health Organization, was just marginally better than last year, but pollution in the capital was still 9 times higher the day after Diwali than on other days. We asked tonight, should there be a law to ban or limit the sale of firecrackers, or would this affect the very spirit of Diwali?
As Diwali firecrackers erupted across the city, Kalam Singh found himself increasingly unable to breathe.
क्या तकलीफ क्या होती है? हर साल होता है या इसी साल?
6 साल हो गए कम से कम। दिवाली के टाइम पे भाई ये धुआं होना से या खांसी जल्दी हो जाती है।
Post Diwali can feel that he is having allergies in his eyes.
A day after Diwali, it is obvious why so many people are complaining of burning eyes, running noses and skin allergy and skin rashes. Delhi's air pollution has gone up an alarming 9 times its usual limit, which is already in the high-risk category. It's not just the national capital. Kolkata's recorded air pollution was 4 times the normal, even Chennai's 2 to 3 times higher than what is normal for that city. Experts say while these figures represent the 24-hour average all over the cities, the actual situation during the peak Diwali hours was even worse, with a huge spike in air pollution levels in residential areas and the air quality dropping to hazardous levels.
See, the official evidence is very clear. From the website of Delhi Pollution Control Committee, you can make out very clearly that how crackers affect pollution. Morning levels low, but evening onwards, the build-up has been so rapid in a residential colony of Arkipuram.
It's definitely an increase in the number of patients that we are seeing in the emergency, in the admissions that we get because of asthma and COPD exacerbations post-Diwali. Plus, of course, OPD attendance also goes up because many people who have inherent allergies of the respiratory tract, be it the nose or the chest, they tend to suffer much more. And
worryingly, India's air pollution standards are also far lower than international norms. The Pollution Control Board's permissible limit for particulate matter less than 2.5 microns is 4 times the limit of the WHO. And while India had dismissed a WHO or World Health Organization study last May, which found that New Delhi had the world's worst air pollution, the government did issue a warning before Diwali, which said air quality would deteriorate to severe levels this week. The Health Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan, appealed for a noise-free Diwali, even asking Delhi's Lieutenant Governor Najib Jung to enforce a 2005 Supreme Court ruling that banned firecrackers in residential areas. Despite warnings from the government and noise and smoke-free campaigns by the police, schools and citizen groups, pollution levels have not come down significantly this year either. While SPM levels, which peaked in 2013 to 1,359 units, are down by a third this year to 856 units, but there is no significant change in the levels of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, though they have not worsened. So what's the answer? With appeals and campaigns failing to make a dent, is a legislation banning or limiting the sale of firecrackers the only way to ensure a truly Swachh Bharat? With Isha Bhalla in New Delhi, Anusya Mathur for NDTV.
And just a short while earlier, I spoke to Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan, who as a practicing ENT surgeon knows all too well how chronic conditions can be aggravated during Diwali. Well, he also made that big appeal to citizens for a noiseless, pollution-free Diwali. Dr. Harshvardhan, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight. Just in Delhi alone today, the day after Diwali, air pollution is 9 times worse than any other day. In Kolkata and Chennai, which are the next worst cities, it's 4 and 3 times worse than normal days. Normal days are not great to begin with. Also, that's the 24-hour average. In peak Diwali hours, data has showed there was an alarming spike in areas, particularly residential areas. How do we prevent this henceforth?
You see, this is something about which I had forewarned everybody, and when I had issued an appeal, it was not only Dr. Harshvardhan, it was the doctor within him and also the health minister who could foresee all these things happening. because I have seen over the years as a practitioner and particularly as an ENT surgeon that all these cases of chronic cough, allergic things you can say appearing, asthmas growing and reappearing and then getting evoked, and of course these issues related to eyes and then perforations of eardrums and burns, they all increase, and then of course no doubt the pollution levels increase. But I feel that slowly and gradually we have to keep this movement on. We have to keep appealing to people, and I am sure and I have the confidence that one day everybody will accept it, because people, I think they listen to reasoning. There may be people who may not have taken it so seriously this year, but in the years to come. I always remember the tobacco movement, which I started 20 years back, and there was hardly any listener to that. But today, all over the world, we have been able to sort of have a strong movement against tobacco with 170 countries signing it, and the law that we made in Delhi, it became a national law with the help of Supreme Court also. So this is something where not only by law or by forcing the things, we have to allow this to grow as a natural movement of preference by the society, and everybody who will love reasoning will certainly appreciate that this is for the better health of their children, it is for the better health of their older people, and it is for the better health of the society and the nation.
Fair point, sir, but we certainly hope that it's not going to take the 20 years that you admit it took the tobacco movement to get to the point where it is now. But particularly at a time when the Prime Minister made such a strong pitch for the Swachh Bharat campaign, are you going to make noise, smoke and garbage-free Diwalis part of the Swachh Bharat campaign?
You see, this is already anything that the Prime Minister made about the Swachh Bharat. It was in fact a strong blessing in disguise for the health movement of this country, and by talking about Swachh Bharat, he was actually certainly implying about a Swasth Bharat. He probably mentioned about it in his speech at India Gate on that 2nd of October itself. And I am sure that issues like this smokeless Diwali, etc., they all contribute to making our city clean and cleaner with each passing day. So I am sure that the movement that he has sort of appealed for, it is going to grow in the times to come. People have taken it to their heart. It may take some time for it to become mature, and there is no reason why we should doubt the actual in-depth intentions of the people of this country. At the end of the day, they always appreciate what is good for them and what is bad for them. For a moment's pleasure and joy, they would not like to compromise with something which is for the larger and the better interest of the country.
Sir, be that as it may, and you know, we take your point about this, but there are many today who are giving the counter argument about how there's industrial pollution through the year, how there's vehicular pollution 365 days of the year. So why crack down on this one particular day, Diwali day, where 3 or 4 hours you have firecrackers burning? What would you say to them?
You see, I always think positively, and I am not going to enter into an argument with anybody, and I don't want to make an issue out of it just for the sake of an argument with people. Will have an argument for everything. You see, there are so many bad things happening in the society, but for that it's not necessary that you don't start with a good thing. So it's not that nothing is being done for the industrial hazards and the industrial pollution and all those things, but there is certainly need to check and improve strategies and strengthen strategies to check pollution by whatever means it is, whether it is the water pollution or the industrial pollution or the air pollution, and anybody contributing to any of these causes which pose a major public you see threat and a major which are a major public hazard. I think they need to be tackled with the utmost sincerity and dedication.
Right. But Is legislation banning or limiting the sale of firecrackers an option that the government is willing to explore? Because for all these appeals that we saw from yourself, sir, and indeed campaigns from schools, from other organizations, very little seems to have actually changed on the ground. And year after year, we continue to have these debates. But how much of a difference does it make?
I would not personally think of legislation, etc., because it's more a movement which has to grow from the heart. It cannot grow out of the law department's legislations or a thing like that. All these movements and all these activities have to be taken largely as friendly activities for the society, and ultimately the people will accept that whether it is an advisory or a law which is for the you can say betterment of the people, they should be accepted as friendly advice. And I gave only a friendly advice, and I am sure that people will accept and one day realize that Dr. Harshvardhan really gave them a friendly advice.
All right, Dr. Harshvardhan, thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight and reminding people of your friendly advice, and we certainly hope they will take them up more seriously perhaps next year, because this year it doesn't seem to have happened. Well, joining us on the discussion tonight, Anumita Roy Chaudhary, Executive Director of the Centre for Science and Environment, Dr. Randeep Guleria, Professor, Department of Medicine, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and Dr. Abha Sehgal, Principal of Sanskriti Schools. Schools, remember, have led the campaign for smoke-free and noise-free Diwalis. But Dr. Guleria, let me begin with you, and I'm sure you feel a sense of ennui, certainly, because Diwali after Diwali we do have these conversations, and at the end of the day very little changes on the ground. Dr. Harshvardhan ruling out the possibility of enacting a legislation which would ban or even limit the sale of firecrackers. But do you feel that very strong, very firm steps now have to be taken, that this can't be left alone to civil rights groups or campaigns alone to enforce pollution levels come down?
Well, you know, this is something we do every year, that we know that there are going to be high levels of pollution during Diwali and the day after Diwali. And we have a lot of talk about it, but I think we need to do something proactive. Last few years there have been a lot of movements, I mean at school level, at social media. It has made some difference, but not the type of difference that one would like to see. So I think we need to find a solution. And I do agree that if we enact a legislation and all, it's something which will damp the spirit. It will not be something which people are comfortable with. So we need to find a mid path, which is where you can have your celebrations, but at the same time you can bring down the levels of air pollution. And solutions like having a community-based Diwali celebration, you can do it in a ground or a park where people can come, and there is a limited time for which it can be done, rather than being done at everyone's house just in front of the driveway. Right. And therefore it creates more noise and pollution in a residential area. So
make it a community activity, make it supervised, make it perhaps have designated places for firecrackers to be.
And if you look at the developed world, maybe even things like 4th of July in the US, a lot of these have become now community activities where people celebrate these functions in a sort of a community manner, in a designated place as a group, where you can have a better form of entertainment and better sort of community level activities rather than just house based functions. So I think there are solutions which we need to look at, maybe think outside the box, rather than just having strict legislations or just doing
and legislations often do not work. You have directives from the Supreme Court which are being flouted. You have mandated firecrackers that are mandated to have the noise levels that they emit on them. Nobody seems to be doing that. So all of these are concerns. Let me go across to Abha Sehgal, Principal of Sanskriti School. Ms. Sehgal, schools have in fact led from the front. Children now actually turn around and say, we know that we don't want to burst firecrackers for these reasons and to keep Diwali smoke and noise free, but sometimes it's just families, it's parents, people who are sticklers for tradition who say this is what Diwali is all about. And then what do you do?
Yeah, like in every other thing, you know, this is a partnership between the school and the parents. The school will do its bit, but it is for the parents definitely to join hands with the school and to take this forward. Now, when you talk about tradition, we should get a clear idea of what tradition really is. And when you say, and also let us understand that we cannot be pedantic towards our children and keep telling them what they should be doing and what they should not be doing. We have to, like Dr. Harshvardhan very clearly said, and very forcefully he put it across, that it has to come from within, and people must have the inclination and the mindset. We should be able to tell the children there are alternatives to this also. Why don't we hype up things like making rangolis or decorating your homes? Let us talk about these things also.
I think it's a fair question that someone has just put on Twitter. You know, where does this come from? Is it part of the religious observances? Why burst firecrackers at all? What is the significance of it?
That's exactly what I wanted to say, that what is tradition really? I don't remember bursting huge bombs when I was a child, or long line of crackers. It was generally just a sparkler, or we were quite happy with just the diyas and the rangolis. Where did this come from? I really don't know.
Okay, that's an interesting question that, of course, we'll sort of continue to explore. But Anumita Roy Chaudhary, you've been talking about how pollution levels actually spiked during those Diwali hours when firecrackers were, going off, and particularly in residential areas. And that's the big concern, really, because chronic conditions get aggravated. There are other health problems like burning of eyes and so on, which get aggravated at this time. So, really, going forward, is it sort of residential areas that need to be tackled? Should that become a priority area for the government? What would you suggest?
See, it's very clear from the data that we have got from the government today that overall, the average level in Delhi, it shows a little decline from last year. But that's really nowhere, because the levels are still much higher, 8 to 9 times higher than the permissible limit. So clearly from public health perspective, the levels that we're talking about today during Diwali night is unacceptable. But what we miss out in the game of average is the pollution peak, and that is what is associated when you're bursting crackers in the evening. And yesterday when we saw that how that begins to spike after 5 p.m. and then during the night, it goes to a level is unthinkable. Now that is our exposure, that is what we are breathing. And imagine people who are already susceptible, asthmatic, with respiratory problems, with cardiac problems, are exposing them to this kind of toxic cocktail. It's just not given. So clearly the message here is that it's tough. It's festival, it's celebration, but, and we have seen over the last so many years, so many anti-cracker movement, yes, maybe, and it has helped. We have seen people saying no to crackers, but it's not showing up. It's not really making the impact.
And perhaps there is a sense that noisy crackers should be avoided, but people are still taking sparklers.
Absolutely, it's a kind of a notion that we avoid noisy crackers, then perhaps it's not that bad. But it's still emitting smoke, and more important, all these sparklers coming with these colors, and you're adding heavy metals, known carcinogens, cancer-causing substance. So all this particulate matter we are talking about, they are loaded with heavy metals, and that's really dangerous.
Dr. Guleria, I'd like you to come in on that as well, because you have this argument, and a lot of people are making this argument very forcefully today, that you have industrial and vehicular pollution throughout the year. You have winter smog in Delhi, which is particularly bad. Why are we making such a big fuss about Diwali pollution then? And I'd like to make that point that really, that you were also talking about, that Diwali pollution is actually different from other forms of pollution. And why is that?
We're looking at two things. One is pollution per se, where we talk of particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, where the levels also peak during and post Diwali. But the type of pollution that we see in Diwali is different. A lot of crackers and sparklers and fuljadis and others which are used in Diwali contain a lot of other substances which are very toxic, heavy metals. And there are studies which have looked at levels of lead, magnesium, iron, and they are almost 20 to 40 times higher than what one would find in the air. So this is not only the pollution that one sees, but a toxic level of pollution that occurs during Diwali, and this has acute effects and long-term effects. Acute effects are not only the lungs, but there are studies which show that these toxic elements can affect a number of systemic organs also, including the blood and neurological features, and long-term effects, because these metals get absorbed or are deposited in the body,
Right.
And there are studies which suggest even pregnant women, that there can be birth defects occurring because of inhalation of higher levels of these heavy metals for a short duration. So it's not a long term duration, but the levels are very high. So the pollution that one sees,
this one day Diwali can actually have long term effects that
Exactly.
last the entire year or perhaps a lifetime.
Exactly. So we're not only looking at the short term effects of asthma getting worse, bronchitis becoming bad, increasing chance of heart disease, which will happen. Those are things which occur during days when pollution levels are very high. But the Diwali smoke causes a lot of effects which are more than that occurs just
Do you
because of
think
air
that
pollution.
message goes out strongly enough? Because I think no one really sort of anticipates the worrying long-term aspects of firecracker pollution.
People don't realize that the pollution that they are exposing themselves to during or after Diwali is totally different from the pollution that occurs on other days in terms of the toxic levels of substances, including heavy metals, that occurs during Diwali.
Abba Sehgal, would this be something that schools should be highlighting perhaps, that Diwali pollution really is not about other forms of pollution at all. This is something that could have serious long-term medical effects, and that's something that children and parents should both know.
Definitely. In fact, while hearing Dr. Guleria, it was really frightening. And I mean, I know that there cannot be a legislation, and we feel that it will dampen the spirit. But what he said was actually quite frightening, and I think the lawmakers will have to now start looking into the kind of crackers that are available in the market, and what is it doing to us. We talk to our children, and I think it was in your news bite, where there was a parent who said that we tell our children not to buy crackers, but ye hamari sunte hi kahan hai, so I watched it in your news channel. Now that's the kind of pressure that the parents, the schools talk about it, but the parents are succumb to this kind of pressure. So I think something needs to be done very seriously. We cannot wait for another long period for the effect of all the campaigns to see some result.
And we can't afford the 20 years that the Union Health Minister spoke about, in terms of the tobacco campaign. So we hope that message goes out tonight, public awareness as well as perhaps
because if people don't understand, then we have to be a little firm about it.
And keep sending that message out, as we will continue to do. But for tonight, thank you so much for joining us on this discussion. We'll slip into a very quick break. There's a lot more.